Hi there, my name's Rob Dunn and I work at Rothamsted Research at Northwick, and I'm just going to give a quite brief presentation about the Farm Crop App Pro. Hopefully you'll have watched Tom's presentation which talks about some of the mitigation measures. I suggest if you haven't seen Tom's presentation, then stop watching this one and go and watch Tom's and then come back here and I'll see you in about 15 minutes. So if you have watched Tom's, then he will have talked about various mitigation measures, and the one I'm going to talk about today is trying to reduce the over-application of organic manures and slurries to reduce the overloading of nitrogen into fields, because we know that nitrogen is important in terms of the release of nitrous oxide from the soil, which is a very potent greenhouse gas, and that's the issue that we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to very briefly talk about why it's important. Obviously the mitigation is the over-application of manures, which then doesn't overload the soil with nitrogen and then reduces the potential for nitrous oxide production. And the Crop App Pro is a free-to-use resource. This is just a screen capture from the Google Play Store, which offers various tools to be able to allow farmers to make in-field decisions about how much slurry and manure they're actually applying to their fields. Some of the features of the Crop App are that it's free to use. You don't need to pay to actually download it from the App Store. It's available on both Apple and Android devices. It's very easy to use. It's easy to mark out where your farm is and which fields you've got. You can put in various bits of information, previous crops and upcoming crops, and it gives you recommendations. You might have seen the symbol for the Crop App Pro in the RB209 manual, because it takes all of its calculations from the fertiliser recommendation handbook. It gives you an assessment of how much organic material you've actually spread, and then gives any advice about extra bagged fertiliser if that should be required. I'm just going to do a quick hypothetical worked example of the use of the Crop App, and my assumption is that most of the Ruby country farms are on heavy clay, and so it's not going to be possible to overwinter animals outside. They're going to be always housed through the winter, and so there's going to be a build-up of organic material that you can then use in the next year to fertilise the fields. So the Crop App itself is very easy to use. It's quite easy to locate where you are. It gives a nice little blue dot if you are connected inside your house. So obviously this is Oakhampton where I live, and the little example I'm going to work is just the field to the north of where the blue dot is. Just highlighted it there and called it your field. If you zoom on that, you can then put little points around the edge of the field to mark out how big the field is. This time it's 2.12 hectares. You can then put in various bits of information. So the soil type, I've said it's a heavy clay. Do we regularly add organic manures? I've said yes. I've put in results from a previous soil test. If you don't have those to hand, you can leave that bit out. The soil nitrogen supply is basically worked out for you from your location in the country and determined by rainfall. So in the southwest, it's a good nitrogen supply. It gives you an option to put in previous crops. So I've said in this example that the previous crop was a forage cut grass, and we mowed that a year ago. I'm going to convert this into a maize crop for maize silage for overwinter feeding. And it gives the crop requirements at the bottom. So the important one to pick out from this is that it's saying that the maize crop requires 20 kilograms per hectare of nitrogen. So just remember that number 20. So if you're going out into the field and doing your slurry spreading, I put down that we're going to do some slurry at the end of April, and I've chosen a 2% dry matter, which is a thin soup, and said that the application is via splash plates and onto the surface. And it gives you various pictures about their slurry application rates, And the little bar, which is red on the left and blue on the right with a yellow dot in the middle, is a slider, so you can move that along, and it has a library of pictures to show you representations of different application rates. So if you were going to go into the field and aim to deliver that 20 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, you could do a pass, hop out of the cabin of your tractor, go back, take a photograph of the slurry that's being applied in the field, and then compare it to the library of pictures. Move the slider along until it looks like what your field looks like, and then look at the amount of nitrogen that's being applied. So in this case, it looks like nitrogen has been delivered at 36 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, which is obviously more than the 20 that the crop required. So you could go back to your slurry spreader, trim it back, and do another pass, and then compare it again to the library of pictures. And this time we've got 19.4 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare. So we're actually spot on for nitrogen requirements. And in terms of nitrous oxide emissions from the soil, one of the key factors is having these high rates of nitrogen within the soil, so that when you do have nitrogen left after the crop's grown and used what it needs, then over the winter when the soil's wet again, you're going to have more nitrous oxide release. You'll also get more in the summer if you apply too much. So the crop app in this case has allowed us to trim back the amount of slurry that's being applied to what the crop requires, and it's also reducing the potential for nitrous oxide release. And like I say, nitrous oxide is a very potent greenhouse gas, which largely comes from agricultural fields. So the UK inventory, which I think Laura might have talked about, will be worked out from the nitrous oxide inventory will be worked out from agriculture. So if we can collectively reduce the over-application of organic material, then it reduces the potential for nitrous oxide release. And one of the previous projects that we were working with was working with Dutchy College, Becky Wilson, and they had an agreement from their farm manager that they had two fields, one which would be managed in a traditional way and one which would be managed in terms of its fertiliser inputs by taking the recommendations from the crop app. So both fields were silage fields, grass silage fields. Both fields had slurry over the winter, and then 50 kilograms of bagged nitrogen applied before the first cut in the spring. And after each silage cut, you had another slurry application. And the crop app field, it said that more fertiliser was required, whereas the traditional management was to have an extra 40 kilograms of nitrogen added after the second cut. And when they did the yield assessments for the fields, it turned out that there was no difference in the yield. So the crop app in this case saved an application of some bagged fertiliser and said that it wasn't required to meet the crop requirements, and so again it would have reduced the amount of nitrogen loading onto the fields and again reduced the potential for nitrous oxide release. And they made some farmer observations at Dutchy College, and they said that they would have used more slurry if it were available instead of utilising bagged fertiliser, and utilise the slurry that they had built up over the winter as a valuable resource and use that to fertilise the crop rather than bagged fertiliser. And an observation that they made was there was more clover in the fields where the crop app was managed. Sorry, the field that was managed with the crop app compared to the traditional management, because I think ammonium nitrate is known to affect clover growth. So if you don't apply it, then you're going to have better clover growth. So the conclusions that we've come to in terms of utilising the crop app to make choices is that it offers solutions to farmers to tailor their nitrogen, particularly nitrogen, but also phosphorus and potassium requirements, and how you can get that from your organic resources. And the CRAP app allows you to actually go out into the field. It doesn't require a phone signal or anything like that. It's all inbuilt within the actual app itself. So if you have poor signal reception, it doesn't matter, you can still use it in the field. And it also allows you to log application rates and applications in the field, and then you can put that onto your farm management plan. And it allows people to share information. So if you have an advisor, you can quickly just show them some of the activities that have been going on, as well as application rates. And it's something that is an iterative process, so it's there to be used to help solve problems on farms, and hopefully it would help to reduce the impact of greenhouse gas emissions on the environment if people were tailoring their application rates to what the crop required. So yeah, if you want to get in touch, my email is there at the bottom of the slide. And thank you very much for listening, and hope to see you at the workshop in a few days' time. Okay, thank you very much. Bye bye.